Hello everyone, welcome to darkfaetarot. You are joining me on what's the end of a very gloomy day in Brussels. Welcome to new subscribers, welcome back to those who already know me. So I'm going to link somewhere here the part 1 of Seasonal Rambles, where I spoke about Mabon, the season of letting go. It is my birthday coming up as well, so it's very much that time of year for me where I really just go into that moment of like, what do I not want to take into the following year? What is dissolving, how I'm breaking down, which is happening actually at this moment in a good way. And also that I explained in the first part that I'm also ending a chapter of my life. It's time for it to go. It's after a very long period. Something has just evolved out of my life. I think that's how I can put it, or dissolved out of my life. And it's good. It's time to move forward. And by coincidence this week, I happened to draw, not coincidence, it is the universe actually, it's spirit speaking to me. I drew the Queen of Cups, and I just thought, oof. Now the Queen of Cups for me has always been a bit of a challenge. I am a Scorpio sun, it's very interesting. So I feel like I should be able to relate to this Queen, but I always find her a little bit challenging actually. My rising sign is Virgo, and for some reason I really just identify with the Princess of Earth, with Malkuth and that energy. So when the Queen of Cups comes along and it's water of water, and and I identify with Malkuth, which is Earth of Earth, it's kind of like form, different forms basically that are in kind of like juxtapositions to each other for me personally. And so water of water is a very interesting energy. And I thought, this is going to be a lesson. There's a reason why she's come up. So today I pulled out some Queen of Cups to talk about, to look at together. And I hope this is of interest to you as much as it is of me. And just speaking about the key, and perhaps it also resonates for you, some elements of it. So going first into it, I'm going to, of course, talk about the very classic Rider-Waite-Smith and the Queen of Cups in that, because, of course, we have that. Just to be very clear, I'm not going to be pulling up the Marseille because I'm not an expert in Marseille, so I don't really feel comfortable talking too much about that particular deck. But I'm going to start with the RWS. Now, the thing that I've always noticed about the Queen of Cups is that out of all the cups, her cup, and also the Temperance card that has cups in it as well, her cup is the one that is closed. And I've always loved that about this Queen of Cups. So we have lots of elements. We have, we have the sea, we have the ocean, her feet are on the stones, on pebbles. She's got this very ornate shell-like throne. She's got the cherubs. But as mentioned, her cup is closed. And out of all the queens, when we compare the Thoth and the Marseille and the RWS, she's the one that's looking at her cup. And I've always found that very interesting as well. So I'm kind of like, okay, what is this queen always saying to me? And the thing that I've always found very interesting about this card, apart from the cup being closed, which of course I find very fascinating, is that the two handles on either side of the cup, if I can say that, they look like claws, but to me they also look like praying angels, and with wings up. And I've always found that like quite fascinating, that it's a bit of a juxtaposition. Like, have I got claws here or angels? Am I being saved or am I being trapped? And I've always found that very interesting with the Queen of Cups as well. So I just thought I'd talk about that, and the fact that this was kind of like going around in my mind again, that, okay, she's back again, and what does she want to say to me? And of course, the Queen of Cups is also very much linked to the High Priestess energy, the flowing robes, of course, the moon, that ocean energy again. So we have that kind of like intuitiveness, that feeling of water, but also the mind, our intuition, our inner calm, and the fact that that this really becomes a point where I'm crossing a threshold, but the threshold is within, it's not without, because of that closed cup. And that's how I'm interpreting it. And what is the key asking of me? So the other aspect that I was looking at, and what is the key asking of me, is, and let me look at, again, also bring out the card that I actually did pull for the Queen of Cups, because I'm actually using the Jupiter Tarot. So if anybody wants to know where this one comes from, this is the deck, the Jupiter Tarot, and it's by, I always get this wrong, Charlie Quintero. It's an indie deck. And the actual card that I actually did pull was this one, which is the Queen of Cups from that deck. And here, half of her face is in shadow. That's the first thing that I had noticed. And the other thing that always strikes me, beyond the beautiful plants growing outside of her head, is the fact that both eyes are actually the same color, the colorings, but because one is in shadow and the other one is in light, they can look so different. And that really got me thinking as well about how things start to look very different when they're illuminated and when they're not, and what that actually can signify. So this has been a lot of my thinking about intuition, and what is now starting to become very clear, that once I go into the murky waters, because water is very confusing, right? In some ways it's transparent, but it can also distort quite a bit. And I find that very intriguing about it. And so it really makes me start to think that what is it that I think I'm seeing, but actually it's a distortion. And so the other card that I absolutely love when I look at the Queen of Cups, and this is kind of like one of my go-to Queen of Cups cards because I'm always having to kind of like go back and meditate on it again and again, is the one from the Thoth. So here we have it. And this one I always love and I find very interesting. So I don't know if that's very clear here. Hopefully it's not too grainy. But, you know, this queen looks directly at me. Now her cup is open, but one of the things that I find very interesting about the swirls of water that come out is that these waters are very much controlled. If you have a look, she's created these swirls. They're just not haphazard. It's not energy that is being thrown around in a manic way. It's creating this beautiful swirl-like pattern. So she's controlling that water very, very well, even though it's coming out of the cup. It's unleashed in that sense, but she's got a control over it. And for me, that always reminds me again, the airy part of this, because all the queens, for water to exist is H2O. So there's some oxygen in it and there's some air in it. And so she's got a very strong control of that mind water energy, so that she really can conquer those emotions and make sure that they don't fly out of the way. Now, the Queen of Cups in the Thoth also is very interesting in the sense that we have a stalk. And I don't know if it comes out clear enough here, but that's her hand that's coming down here to hold the stalk. There's also a lotus flower there as well. But I just want to focus on a few bits. The way I was focusing here on the closed cup and the claws of the praying angels. This time I want to look at that hand because I find it very, very fascinating. So that coming down is her hand. Because when we turn the card upside down and we see her reflection, that's her robes, but now you start to see them in a very distorted manner. And I don't know how well it's coming out here, but when you look at her hand, hopefully you've all got a copy of the Thoth deck. I do recommend having at least one copy of it. You don't need multiples like myself, but you need one is good. But when you look at the hand in this Thoth deck and the reflection, that hand becomes webbed. And I love that. This is a very Neptunal card, very Piscean. And for me, this always reminds me that, again, of that distortion of water and winds. Neptune has very, very high winds. It's one of the windiest planets. It is the windiest planet in the solar system. And I always find it very interesting that Poseidon has this ability to cause that confusion. But it's needed. Sometimes we need that distortion because we need to look again, what am I actually really looking at? And I love it because in upright, she looks like she is taking care of this stalk. She's just, she's like a guardian over it. And when I see it webbed, and I see how she's holding that stalk, it starts to present itself slightly different. And of course the cup changes as well as soon as we turn it over. It's more of a shell, while here we have it more of as a fish. So anyway, I don't know if any of what I'm saying makes sense. Hopefully it does make sense. But this really has been a week where I'm kind of like, there's a lot of distortion of what am I really looking at, and is it true? So I made this video today especially because it's midweek and I came home and I was disappointed over something. And in my disappointment, I started to feel, first of all, like, just, the external factor, like that doesn't feel fair, that's whatever, those things do go around in our head. We're human. And I feel like, I'm allowed to have those emotions kind of thing. Well, what was interesting was, and I want to go back to this queen, is that in this one, because that cup is closed, and in this one, because she's got such control over those waters, what I started to feel in this evening when I was thinking about that disappointment was how much my mind becomes its own echo chamber, where it's not now the external factor, but it's the internal reverberations that are happening. And how much there's a distortion, because of course, like we all know from our shadow work, it's always, there's the story behind the story. There's kind of like, and it reminds me of this, and then I think of this, and then I think of that, and then we just go back. And I had to catch myself going, okay, this is an echo chamber in my own head, and it's all becoming a little bit like that webbed hand, where what seems to be a guardianship of my emotions, I can end up starting to really just manipulate them in a way that I don't need to. So yeah, I don't know if any of this is making sense, but this has been like, what I've kind of like been reflecting on, and I thought it'd be good to do a video on it. And just looking at those essences of the Queen. The other thing that happened was in the last few days was when I was doing a challenge. So I'm following Kelly from the Truth in Story on Instagram as well, and she's doing an October challenge called, I think, Embracing the Magical or something like this. And as I was looking at that, and I was doing some card pulls from that, again, I had, and I'm using the Tarot Vampyres by Ian Daniels for that specific challenge. Again, I had the Queen of Cups come up at one point. I can't remember which prompt it was, but it was the Queen of Grails in this deck. And you can see that beautiful serpent. This for me is very much giving that nod to the scorpionic vibe of the Queen of Cups. But of course, the Queen of Cups is naturally always attributed to either Cancer or Pisces. But in here she has the snake, and I love that. Again, it's that ripple. And I really love Ian Daniels because I personally feel that he's really taken on, he takes some parts of the RWS and he takes some parts of Thoth. So it's really going back to that true original Golden Dawn thinking where he's making his own deck. And to me, it again comes back to the swirls of the Thoth. So if you have a chance again to put these cards next to each other, and she's poised in the Tarot Vampire. She's poised. She's looking straight at us again, the way that she does in the Thoth deck. And a little bit different though is that the Queen of Grails in the Ian Daniels version, she's a little bit kind of like, towards the side and leaning, like, it's a pleasure for her to be in this throne, and she doesn't have to stand on guard or anything, she owns that throne kind of thing. So that's what I take away from it. But again, she has full control over that snake, and that snake is a part of her shedding her skin. So she has control over the changes that are happening emotionally. She has that strength. So yeah, I think that these are good examples, and and this feeling of being poised, and this feeling of just being able to hold her energy. I think the one thing that I want to say is that as I come to the end of like this video, I want to wrap it up soon because we're 15 minutes in and we're only on one key. But one of the things that I take away from this is that, you know, and the last card actually I want to show, I will show this one actually, is I decided to, something told me, look at the Queen of Cups in the Deviant Moon Tarot. So it's like, okay. And here she is in the Deviant Moon. And she's catching the water. And then I had to look again and I thought, yeah, it is water, it's not blood. But she's catching that water. She's not going to let it hit the ground. And that again made me think that there is something very important here about this control over the water in that cup. So this time we have the cup open. But she's calm and she's not letting that water hit the ground. So for me, it's all coming back to the fact that this water is contained very, very well, whichever way we look at it. And going back to this, you know, it really makes me think of kind of like, you know, how my emotions as they go round and round, whether they're swirling up around my head or inside the chalice, this really is a mastery over that water, and to ensure that I understand the distortions that are happening. And finally, I just want to share something which I had from the book. So I don't know if any of you, this is the book, The Crowley Tarot by Akron and Hajo Banzhaf. This is still available. It's a US Games print. And I was looking at the Queen of Cups in there, and I was reminded here, and I just want to read from it. It says, when it comes to the Queen of Cups here, it said here that the Queen of Cups is the anima mundi, the soul of the world. And I thought that was quite funny. And I was kind of like reminded that she is the ruler over the unconscious soul powers, the good fairy, and the wise enchantress within us, the clear-sighted interpreter of our dreams, and the prophetess who can penetrate the mists. So I won't say too much more. This is a really good book. If you haven't, even if you're not into reading Thoth, I really recommend. I mean, this, like, I think it's $15. So, and still in print. So it's very accessible, I think, budget-wise, and, you know, to get hold of. But I really believe that when it comes to like just the keys and the depth that goes with some of the Thoth work, I find is just absolutely superb, you know. And I really did have to think of, like, you know, going back to the fact that, you know, the Queen of Cups belongs in Kabbalah. I would see her under Bina, and that is, of course, the female aspect, but it's also the pillar of severity. And people go, severity, but, you know, it's the pillar of restriction. There is some restriction here. And I find that very interesting that in the end, you know, the Queen is not, it's not an unfettered power. It's about having those emotions bound, actually, for healthy reasons. So I hope this little ramble made sense to some of you. It's gone long enough. I'm going to stop here. I will continue my whole disillusion series. I think there'll be another one probably, and then I'll wrap up. But it's been an interesting period for me, and thank you for joining me today. I wish you a wonderful week wherever you are. Take care now.